Queen Amidala's handmaidens were much more than servants or maids, as they would have you believe. The idea behind the handmaidens is that, on the surface, they appear as a mere entourage for the queen wherever she goes, but in reality they are skilled combatants and possess a plethora of other abilities, like subterfuge. In fact, one such motivation for establishing the handmaiden program, for lack of a better term, was to double as the queen, to serve as a decoy for her in times of peril. The program itself was revived and revamped by Padmé Amidala and Corsh Panaka, a captain in the Royal Naboo security forces. Many years prior, queens had several handmaidens that acted as bodyguards, but that time had passed as Naboo had become more peaceful. Now, traditionally, a queen of Naboo always has one handmaiden, and upon Padmé's victory in the election for the position, Captain Panaka revealed to Padmé that he had already picked a potential candidate to serve as Padmé's handmaiden. Before Padmé had actually won the election and was only just campaigning, Panaka had been the captain assigned to her protection, as all candidates received a bodyguard. During this time period, Panaka took it upon himself to find Sabin, a young girl with a remarkable resemblance to Padmé. Sabin had spent her life playing music like her older brothers, performing in orchestras at the Theed Conservatory. Sabin sadly always saw herself as second best, never being good enough to be in the front row of the orchestra. That is until Panaka discovered her. Panaka had a sneaking suspicion that Padmé would win the upcoming election to be the Queen of Naboo, even going so far as to express this to Senator Palpatine the night before the results were revealed to the planet, which is generally frowned upon and seen as biased. Panaka and Senator Palpatine were besties at this point in time, at least from Panaka's point of view. Either way, Panaka had requested that Sabin hold off on any offers to perform in any orchestras off-planet so that he could call on her in the future. This would come to fruition, and the day that Padmé became the Queen of Naboo, Panaka revealed to Padmé that he had already found a handmaiden that could pose as her double, this being Sabin. He had also pushed to increase the standard complement of security forces assigned to the Queen's protection. Generally, there is a roster of 16 security troops assigned to the Queen's protection, but one of Corsh Panaka's most defining traits is arguably his paranoia and emphasis on stronger security measures. This isn't strictly without reason, as the previous queen had favored isolationist policies and foreign relations had therefore deteriorated. But Panaka certainly sensed things would get even worse soon. Padmé built upon Panaka's suggestion of a handmaiden who could double as a decoy and a bodyguard, claiming that if there were only two of them, the queen and the handmaiden, and the two of them were to switch places for the decoy maneuver, then it would be easier for others to discover the change. Furthermore, Padmé reasoned, it would allow for more bodyguards to be surrounding the queen at all times, something that Panaka would appreciate because of his emphasis on security. With this suggestion, Panaka sought to increase the handmaiden roster, specifically for girls who looked similar to Padmé. His first pick was a girl named Rabine Tonsort, a dropout from one of Naboo's prestigious schools. Rabine had been caught running a forgery ring out of her school's basement. According to her teachers, she was exceptionally skilled at music, acting, and sculpture. Panaka recognized these skills and spoke with Rabine at the school, interviewing her for the position, but not telling her exactly who he was or that it was for the handmaidens. However, Rabine was able to deduce that Panaka was a captain and that he was hiring her for something big regarding the queen. In Panaka's words, he valued Rabine's capability for deceit. He wanted Rabine to teach Padmé how to hide in plain sight and how to blend into the wall decorations, how to watch for things that Padmé doesn't know how to watch out for, and how to spot a fake. Rabine accepted the position. Panaka then surveyed an acting troupe, looking for other actors who could also double and act as Padmé. During these visits to the workshop where the actors rehearsed, he nearly tripped over a young girl sitting outside the building named Sasha Adova. Sasha had noticed that Panaka had frequently visited the acting workshop, and deduced rather easily that he was looking for body doubles for the newly elected queen. She suggested to Panaka that he select Ertama Ballery, one of the set designers for the acting troupe. This piqued Panaka's curiosity, and he valued Sasha's observance and ability to be unnoticeable. He offered her the job, and only afterwards did he realize that Sasha, having watched Panaka visit the building several times before, tripped Panaka on purpose and maneuvered the conversation so that Panaka would offer her the handmaiden position. He laughed to himself about this, feeling that Sasha would fit right in as the queen's security. Then, Panaka entered the workshop building to hire the next handmaiden that Sasha suggested, Heir Tama Valerie. As stated before, she was a set designer for the rehearsals, and her abilities lay strictly in craftsmanship. She was largely ignored by her fellow actors and directors, which caused much frustration, so when Panaka offered her the job of handmaiden, she accepted. The final handmaiden that Panaka selected was a weaver named Suyan Higan. While selling her work in the market, Panaka visited and asked her about her fabrics, specifically if Suyan was capable of weaving waterproof or fireproof clothing. Panaka recognized her potential as an artist and armorer and offered Suyan a handmaiden position as well, to which she accepted. With the roster complete and a total of 5 handmaidens selected, Panaka introduced them all to Padmé. The handmaidens then brainstormed an idea that, to further cause confusion amongst outsiders, they should mimic Padmé's name, so that they can make the decoy process much simpler. Rabin changed her name to Rabe, Suyan to Yane, Sasha to Sache, Heir Tama to Erte, and Sabin to Sabe. I may have mispronounced some of those. Anyway, together, the handmaidens and Padmé began formulating ways they could work together more efficiently, and they all contributed and taught Padmé their individual skill sets. Panaka began training the handmaidens in combat. In fact, the Academy for the Royal Security Forces implemented classes and techniques based on Panaka's handmaiden training. There actually had been another handmaiden named Corden that Panaka had chosen, but she unfortunately did not do well in the training and was dismissed. Captain Panaka would be proven correct in his paranoia sometime soon into Padmé's first term as the queen, as the Trade Federation blockaded the planet, and Padmé and Sabe had to switch positions for the entirety of the situation. The blockade forced the handmaidens to split up, with some staying behind on the planet, and some escaping with Padmé to get help from the Republic. Sache and Yane had stayed behind, and were placed into camps by the droids. Sache had unfortunately been heavily tortured for information, but she did not give up anything to the Federation. When Padmé, Panaka, and the others returned to Naboo, they managed to get into contact with the other handmaidens in the camp, and coordinated a counterattack on the Trade Federation. Through the use of the handmaidens and the contingencies they created together, Padmé and Sabe managed to fool the leader of the Trade Federation and force their surrender, thus repelling the blockade. Following the Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo, discussions were had regarding the security of the planet. Ultimately, an ion pulse was installed in the city of Theed to act as a deterrent to future invasions. But Panaka had openly and aggressively argued for more drastic measures than an ion pulse. With Naboo being a planet that values pacifism, this push for more defenses drove a wedge between Panaka and everyone else in his life, including Padmé and even his wife Mariak, who was also a captain in the Naboo Royal Security Forces. He did, however, maintain his friendships with both now Chancellor Palpatine and even Padmé's father, whom Korsh would frequently visit for dinner after his tenure as Padmé's personal guard was over. When Padmé's terms as the queen were up, the incoming queen Raylada asked that Padmé continue serving Naboo as the senator in the Galactic Republic. Padmé was surprised by this request, but accepted. With almost all of her previous handmaidens going their own way, Padmé needed a new group of handmaidens while on Coruscant, the capital of the Republic. Sabe chose to remain a handmaiden. Together, they discussed who they could get to serve as Padmé's handmaidens on Coruscant. They chose Corden, the handmaiden before who failed the training, Versat, Panaka's niece, and Dora, one of the security forces who took the handmaiden training classes in the academy when it was offered. These new handmaidens changed their names to Corday, Verse, and Dorme. For almost a decade, they served Padmé during her time as a senator, and during that time period, they brought on more handmaidens to join their entourage, though they did not all share the same training, nor did they all change their names to mimic Padmé's, but they did serve Padmé just as loyally. When the Clone Wars came to an end many years later, and Padmé had died, the remaining Handmaidens and many members of the royal security forces formed a group called the Amidalans. This group tasked themselves with unmasking the true nature of Padmé's death and avenging her, becoming an early rebel cell of sorts. Meanwhile, Panaka, still maintaining his friendship with Palpatine, who now has become the Emperor, received a promotion to Moff of the Sector. While most of Naboo felt nothing but disgust towards the Emperor and the newly formed Empire, Panaka remained loyal to Palpatine. His wife and family did not join him. Many years later, in 3BBY, Panaka actually met with Princess Leia to discuss the working conditions of the mines on Naboo's moons. But during the meeting, Panaka noticed how similar Leia looked to Padmé, and he began connecting the dots. However, before he could reveal anything about his conclusions, the partisans assassinated him. Meanwhile, the Amidalans continued their search for Padmé's killer, and believed that Darth Vader was the culprit. Little did they realize that Vader was Anakin Skywalker, Padmé's husband. The Amidalans hunted Vader, fighting him on Naboo and even the asteroid Paulus Massa. The Amidalans were not successful, and Vader emerged victorious in the fight, but the Handmaidens did survive, including Sabe. And that should do it for this video. I believe I've covered everything there is about Panaka and the Handmaidens. If I missed anything, please let me know. As always though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.